Enter Shigeru Miyamoto. Yamauchi, still angry at his son-in-law, was unwilling to allocate his senior design staff to the project, and so tasked the creation of a new game to Miyamoto, a junior member of the company who had never designed a video game before. Not that Miyamoto was left entirely on his own. Gunpei Yokoi aided the project in a supervisory role. With his help, Miyamoto decided to make a game based on the character Popeye, believing the name recognition would resonate with American audiences. Rather than starting with a gameplay concept, Miyamoto's approach was more thematic. He wanted a game that focused on the love triangle between Popeye, his girlfriend Olive Oyl, and series villain Bluto, with players taking the role of the Sailor Man as he rescued Olive Oyl from Bluto's clutches. Unfortunately, Nintendo was unable to attain the rights to license a Popeye game, and so Miyamoto had to rework the concept. Replacing Popeye would be a construction worker named Jumpman, so called because the gameplay, Miyamoto decided, would involve a lot of jumping. Olive Oyl was replaced with a generic damsel in distress simply called Lady. Bluto, however, was given a significant overhaul. The name Donkey Kong is a bit unusual. Many assume that the name Kong is a direct reference to King Kong, and this is partially true. Yamauchi insisted the game be given an English title in order to appeal to its intended American audience. Miyamoto, at the time, did not speak English particularly well, and relied on sometimes inaccurate translations. He wanted to name the game after its simian villain, and King Kong was used as a general term in Japan for any large ape. Most Japanese people, including Miyamoto, did not know that it referred to a specific, copyrighted character. He wanted to show that this King Kong was stubborn in his pursuit of Lady, and while looking up English words for the concept, came across the term donkey, likely a mistranslation of the idiom stubborn as a mule. Miyamoto, like Pac-Man creator Toru Iwatani, wanted to make a game that was, for lack of a better word, narrative. The gameplay had to be fun, of course, but rather than focusing solely on mechanical elements, as most of Atari's games did, Miyamoto wanted to tell a story. Donkey Kong put players in the role of a hero, tasked with rescuing a damsel from a monster. It's basically a reworked version of the Princess and Dragon theme endemic to folklore and mythology, though providing a modernist twist by casting the hero as a working-class Joe. Jumpman wears overalls and a simple, utilitarian cap. He uses hammers as weapons. He's also kind of short and schlubby looking, with a thick black mustache, a graphical choice of Miyamoto's in order to give the character's 16 by 16 pixel sprite a more distinctive face, and thus identity. Like many mythical heroes, he climbs a tower, facing ever greater challenges as he ascends. But, as a construction worker, this is probably a tower of his own making. Some commentators have suggested that Donkey Kong has an ever so slight communist undertone, and while it's fun to theorycraft, I don't think this was intentional on Miyamoto's part. Nevertheless, there's a lot more going on narrative-wise than was expected in an arcade game. And that all three characters have since become enduring mascots is a testament to how much Miyamoto was able to do with so little. After settling on the game's theme, characters, and location, Miyamoto got to work on how it would actually play. He didn't want to make a thinly veiled clone of a more established property. Radar Scope had shown the error of that method, but something entirely new. Well, maybe not entirely. Donkey Kong was the first platformer to become widely known, but the first instance of the genre, ever, was 1980's Space Panic, developed by Universal. Not the film studio, though they will be making an appearance soon. Space Panic, like Donkey Kong, involved platforms, ladders, and hammers, which the player used to knock holes in the platforms in order to cause enemies to fall through them. It was kind of like Burger Time. Miyamoto may have copied elements from Space Panic, but he added an essential ingredient that would be at the core of nearly all subsequent platformers: jumping. When asked to describe what kind of game Donkey Kong was, Miyamoto would usually say it was an athletic-type game, or if pressed to elaborate further, would call it a running/climbing/jumping game. As with the Magnavox Odyssey, there really wasn't much of a frame of reference for what it was trying to do. Donkey Kong's graphics were impressive. In Space Panic, all the platforms were arranged in horizontal rows, and every level had the same layout. So did Pac-Man. Donkey Kong had 4 unique layouts, each one requiring a different strategy and set of skills. Rather remarkably for the time, the very first level features diagonal platforms, and there's even a narrative reason for this. The game begins with a cinematic of sorts in which Donkey Kong stomps across the girder at the top of the screen, knocking all the girders below him askew. If the player succeeds in beating all 4 levels, Jumpman hurls Donkey Kong from the tower and reunites with his kidnapped love. This was an arcade game designed to eat quarters, and so there is no official endpoint. Upon reaching the 4th screen, the game simply restarts at the first, and as with Pac-Man, the game function breaks down after a certain point, with players unable to advance beyond the 117th level. Nevertheless, Donkey Kong was, for the time, pretty darn innovative. The monitor was even installed at a 90-degree angle to give the game a greater sense of verticality. Miyamoto was proud of Donkey Kong, and Yamauchi was confident it would succeed in North America. The game was officially released in Japan on July 9, 1981, and debuted stateside just a few weeks later. Once the parts arrived in Washington, Arakawa worked furiously to convert the radar scope cabinets. Short-staffed, he converted some of them himself, as did his wife and the 2 members of his distribution network, a pair of American truck drivers named Al Stone and Ron Judy. It was a very stressful time for Nintendo of America, both due to the need to make this new game work and the fact that they were having trouble making rent payments for their North American warehouse. They had to ask for extensions several times, angering the property's manager, Don James. In order to ameliorate things somewhat, Arakawa renamed some of Donkey Kong's characters after his landlord and associates. Lady became Pauline, after Don James's wife. The main character, Jumpman, was rechristened in honor of the warehouse's owner, an overweight, mustachioed Italian-American man named Mario Segali.